Recording. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Public Services Committee meeting. This is the first of this year, and therefore stands with us to elect a new chair and deputy chair for this committee. Can I ask if we have any nominations?
I propose Councillor Stuart Mackay to be chair of this committee.
Do we have a seconder, please? Thank you. And do we have any other nominations for position of chair? Okay, so I think that goes. All those in favour? Yes, thank you very much. Would you like to come join us as chair, please?
Okay. So yes, it now comes to elect a deputy chair. In terms of nominations, I have a proposal myself, and that is for Steve Harvey. Second. Is there any other nominations for deputy chair? So all those in favour? Easy. So, right. To item 3, to no declarations of members of interest. Councillor,
I think I should make a non-pecuniary declaration of interest in item, I think it's 9 Railway Cottages Update. As a member of the Residents and Friends Association Committee.
so then on to item 4, that's to confirm and sign the minutes of the Operations and Improvements Committee meeting held on the 12th of March 2024. That they are a true record of the meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to propose one small amendment. That is on minute 23/4/9. It should be the name of the park is it should be Brookhouse Drive Park or Pember Park, one or the other.
Yes.
Right, okay, so,
Yes.
yes, so sort of proposed minutes. Yeah, as amended. And second, Councillor Morris, and all those in favour? Thank you, so.
Would you like? Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, so moves on to item 5, public participation. It's the period not exceeding 15 minutes for members of the public to ask questions or submit comments in relation to the published agenda items. So I have noted there are no questions or comments received before the meeting. Move on to item 6, to provide a review of work streams of this committee as they relate to the prior iteration and future delivery.
Thank you. So this is a summary really of the areas of interest for this committee. fairly straightforward transfer of budgets and responsibilities for a number of services. So the Rangers and maintenance of the town centre, CCTV, Ranger Service, crew, other external contractors such as floral schemes, play and park area improvements, allotments, public realm, and what was formerly known as regeneration projects. The only area that has been taken from this committee's responsibility is that of heritage projects, and that is now the heritage officers reporting into the events and culture committee. So there is still scope, should members feel, particularly in those areas such as public realm and projects where you might wish to suggest amendments to how that budget is spent, and therefore that's open for consideration, discussion perhaps at future meetings. But if there are any matters that members would like to raise at this point that I can report back or develop some thoughts for you, then I'm quite happy to do that. But in essence, the committee here is looking at developing the place and investing in the place of Crewe and its environment.
Any questions? Great. So we take that as noted. So on to item 7. Consider options for the allocation of Cleaner Crewe funding for 24-25.
Now, this is an issue that has been discussed many times by this previous committee, and at the last meeting of O&I, I was asked to focus some suggestions for the use of Clean Crewe budget in terms of a neighbourhood type role. This is replacing the funding that was previously allocated to an enforcement officer. So I've tried to give you as wide a picture as I can of where the project, the Cleaner Crewe project, ended up, the sort of approach that was taken, some of the successes from that project and some learning from it to help to steer you or to help to understand where possibly you would like to allocate that budget. And I've looked at some options. In essence, the Cleaner Crewe project didn't resolve every issue in that area, but it certainly went a long way to that. And if you look at the Crewe South area, those 20 streets, residents have made some amazing strides in improving the look and feel of certain alleyways and managed to sort of reclaim space. There's been an improved communication between the various elements, particularly Cheshire East and AMSA, who have some ownership of the issues and some ability to react to those issues, whether it be responding to flighted waste and taking enforcement action where it can be evidenced and it's possible to do that. There have been changes in policy through Cheshire East Council, and housing have played a role as well, as far as they can, in tackling issues with landlords where they can be identified, and they have the ability to work with those relationships or to put them straight in terms of responsibilities. So a lot was gained. I had a meeting with all of those agencies after our last meeting to ask them where they best felt a role could help to serve the overall purposes of improving the Cleaner Crewe project. And they made a number of suggestions. So their recommendations overall were to help to manage bins left on streets. But I think we all need to be realistic. It's not possible for one person to get every bin left on the street removed. But where they are removed, it does improve the appearance of the place, but also helps to reduce the fly tipping that normally happens around those abandoned bins. So to do some work on perhaps the worst areas, to work with residents groups and to assist them in creating new groups and in sourcing grants. The example being with the residents of Crewe South alleyways and the success they've achieved in terms of funding and the work that they've been doing. To put people in touch with other people and agencies who can assist or work with them, so to do some signposting or to help bring in additional support. To help to identify and work with community champions, in particular, alleyway champions or champions on particular streets who are prepared to do a little bit of door knocking and working with their local community. To engage with other supporters such as Community Payback, who've been very helpful in providing labour for some of the bigger projects, and there have been other supporters, private businesses, etc. The local MP, there've been all sorts of people who've been involved in supporting some of those clean-up activities. And then to add or complement the work of existing groups and processes, and that's a bit of a moving feast, but by keeping up that communication, there are sometimes opportunities to enhance what people are doing by sharing knowledge or throwing something else into the process. And then another suggestion was to make better use of social media to increase the positive messaging and engagement around managing those alleyways. And certainly, you know, those good news stories when they get through certainly have received an awful lot of support online. So from that, I've given you some options in terms of that neighbourhood type role. So the first option is a waste management officer to be employed by Crewe Town Council. That officer would require a vehicle too. It's not a putting an officer in place to actually go around the whole of Crewe and perhaps move a few bins themselves and take a kit so they can, you know, look after their own personal cleanliness and safety and to provide a visual presence on the streets. We would need a liveried vehicle. So I've provided an estimation of the cost there, including that vehicle, to bring an officer into that role. It exceeds the cost of the contract with Cheshire East Council for the enforcement officer, but that's where I've made the suggestion for that particular role. There are some issues with employing an officer in that situation. We had this experience with 2 street senior officers in the past, and this would be a similar role in that they didn't have the powers and they didn't have the clout, if you like, to fully engage with the community, and they had the extra effort of the coordination with external agencies to get things done. So they were asking favours, not calling within the same organisation, if you like, for support. Also, we have the practicalities of a vehicle which needs to be housed on what becomes quite a crowded car park, which is unmanned at night. So there's an asset that will be sitting here in the evenings. Nevertheless, if that's where members would like to focus, then we would have sufficient budget for 6 months employment, or the rest of this financial year by the time someone was recruited, but we'd be looking to increase budget for next year to continue that employment of an officer. Another option, which is slightly more costly again, but has some advantages, is to bring in a waste management support officer to be employed by ANSA. Now, ANSA does have 2 waste management officers at the moment. They were employed, I think, back in November last year, and their initial role was to support the rollout of the brown bin scheme, but also to produce a lot of data for the waste management team to help direct to any particular issues. Also to go out and do the sort of doorstepping, which is I've identified in the previous role. So I would envisage that being a role that we would go back to ANSA to make propose some changes that make it more specific to Crewe's needs, and they would just be servicing Crewe. The other 2 officers at the moment are spending roughly 35% of the time in Crewe. So that would be a complementary role to that. Again, the costs exceed, but very similar situation. I believe that we would be able to employ them for most of this year, the remaining year, to carry that role, and we would then have to go back to council for increased budget next year. Advantages of that role being internal to ANSA would be around that connection, for example, with the waste management team, getting those contaminated bins lifted, pointing out any issues with processes in terms of ANSA's waste management, etc. Also, they are internal in terms of connection with Cheshire East Council, and they would have the additional support of being connected to a bigger team, so they would not necessarily be working alone, and a big call there to fellow officers should they need additional support, etc. So the next option would be to employ what I'm referring to as a neighbourhood resource officer, which would report into Crewe Town Council, and that would be very much around a kind of community role, helping to organise community clean-ups, setting up those residents groups, and all the things that go in support of that, producing literature, assisting with funding applications, perhaps visiting schools, etc. Again, that means there would be some support visible to the community from the town council, and give that learning that might help with future positive change. That role may need to be, if we get to the detail of the grading, may need to be a part-time rather than a full-time role to deliver that scope of management and knowledge. So there are some issues there. Again, it's an external to the other bodies that are managing the waste in Crewe, so there may be some limitations there. And then finally, an additional suggestion would be to commission an external agency purely to do some education work in the community around waste management, recycling, etc. And that may be ANSA, who also have a communications team who go out and do that kind of work in schools, and that could be the sort of focus of that type of role. So, question stands with members. How would you like to steer this officer role?
Yes, Councillor.
One of the things I was thinking of when looking through these options is how do we measure the success of any of the options? I mean, presumably the ones which are around waste management would be about interventions that are made or assessment of the impact that is being made in a particular area. As far as the neighbourhood resource officer is concerned, that may be a bit more difficult to do, wouldn't it?
It would. I think it's have to be around number of people engaged, number of education activities, community activities, that type of approach. But I suppose at the end of the day, you would still have the figures that Cheshire East can produce around issues reported, and you could isolate that by area. So you might be able to find, although difficult to prove a correlation, you might be able to find a correlation in some reductions.
Yes,
I'd like to just ask, when we go to option 3, neighbourhood resources officer, council, where is the costing of that's going to cost us? Because option 1 has given us a figure, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Option 3 is it going to be similar?
I was anticipating with that type of role it wouldn't be a full-time role, and we'd work around the costs, around the budget that's been allocated.
I just wanted a bit more clarity really on all the, I know there's a lot writing here, and I suppose that's my fault, I've read it all before, but looking at option 2, which is the waste management, I believe that might be more effective in as much as they've got better resources. What we want to try and aim for is some sustainability really, and the financial cost to this, see an actual difference. I think the actual problem is, yeah, it's a bit of education, yes, but also, what do people do with their bulk waste? How do they get rid of it? So there is that issue that we can't ignore, like the big elephant in the room. So, you know, what do they do? Microwave's broke, what do they do with it? How do they get rid of it? Washing machine's gone, what do they do with it? That kind of thing. I know we touched on it last time we had this conversation about, yes, the council, you can be the council, they charge X amount, blah, 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 blah. But clearly nobody's actually doing that. So a lot of people, which is apart from the usual clothes are getting thrown out and that kind of thing, it is, a lot of it is rubbish.
It is bulky waste.
Exactly. So I suppose the question I would like answering, I don't know how anyone could actually answer it, is quite honestly, would role number one with the town council, town council at 55,000, or answer anyone actually solve that problem? Because, it's a bit like I sort of raised last time. We've got actual big men, they've got more facilities, they've got the big kit. You've almost got to do something quite different to eradicate the situation, because it's not going to go away. We are in a waste society. Nowadays, nobody does mending thingy, they'll just go for it, get rid of it. But how? People not always got cars, etc., etc. So the question is, if that's incorporated and somehow they can get rid of the waste, then fine. But if they're not, it's just an education thing, then I don't know if that's going to work either.
It's we unfortunately, don't mind me answering, we as a town council, one role, you can't drink the ocean.
No.
And so it's focusing on how you think best we can serve that. And certainly around education, ANSA already produced lots of literature, and it may be a matter of encouraging better disposal of waste and letting people know about schemes. But ultimately, ANSA are responsible for collecting that waste and also collecting the fly-tipped waste. Unless we're looking at investing in extra infrastructure as a town council to manage that waste, then it's a very difficult one for us to resolve, apart from that support education and trying to notify enforcement when there's a clear case that can be identified of an individual who's fly-tipped waste. Which can sometimes happen. It has happened.
I appreciate that. That's another one answer to that.
That's why I thought about my own intro as well. What I thought was interesting about basically what you've got effectively there's two different approaches here. One of them is dealing with the actual waste. The other one is trying to deal with the misinformation or information around it. So the two approaches are very much that. I will admit although it's a nice, quick and easy method of sending someone out there, getting rid of the rubbish. It looks nice, it's very quick. It's going to be a persistent fix, and it's never going to really change anything as such. For the fact that the Council already mentioned about the fact that there are already things in place, and it's about informing people what's available to them and how they actually take. Provider. And when it says the answer here is about not just the education, but also coordination of waste. Someone could be there to actually say, this is what's available to you, this is how so from my perspective, I would be leaning definitely more into the education role, because there are already procedures in place to collect.
It is very difficult to deal with, to consider it. We put forward a budget of £37,000 to support an enforcement officer or enforcement presence anyway within a particular project which has now been scrapped by Cheshire East and the plan to lock it out. It's ended because of budget pressures. And we're bound to ask, if we were funding a community enforcement officer for £37,000, we could ask an obvious question like, well, how did they get around that? They didn't walk about, did they? I mean, was there an economy of scale? It wasn't a part-time presence. So, I mean, I'd like to know an answer to that from somewhere, because that £37,000 must have purchased somebody's time, whether and presumably full time. Otherwise, why would we talked about supporting a community enforcement officer? So there's a bit of a question there, because in my mind, I think, well, we're saying if we view one of these options, one or two, it's going to cost considerably more than that. Which is really quite interesting. Was the
There are a few things. One is the grade officer, so in fact it fitted into the sort of standard Cheshire East enforcement grade. It was fitting into part of the team, and we were just adding to a service. The other element of this, and the costing was probably quite kind. It didn't involve providing an individual with a vehicle. It was part of a shared thing. And also, as an organisation, Cheshire East were not taking any kind of profit or management fee out of that, whereas ANSA is a commercial, or more commercial setup, and therefore there may be some scope to negotiate down on some of these costs, and maybe, I can't promise that, we'll certainly try to do that, but that's the basic difference. The other matter to consider is that the waste officers, the waste management officer role, is combining a bit more of the sort of project management, etc., rather than just one role. So therefore, that project management role has actually taken Cheshire East by a much higher grade project manager for the business improvement team, and you're trying to go somewhere in between, so you need some scope to go to that scale for the role. And that's not really any disservice to an enforcement officer, but they fit within a different scale.
Because I just made a couple of notes at the moment. I mean, I'm really, there's four options, and I'm not sure that none of them is ideal, as outlined. So it's a difficult one to decide on. But I would think, I mean, the point about clearing things, I wouldn't see this role, conceivably I don't think it should do, but I don't think the person, or the role that we support should be take moving bins to start, because that's already underway. There are already, the clean-up teams or backup teams, or backup team in ANSA that does that. And plus, as somebody said, if you keep clearing bins, it's a town council role. Carry on doing that.
I wouldn't suggest it as move it as that sort of moving things.
No. So I mean, the role needs to include, certainly needs to include education. And the schools aspect, the school colleges aspect is already covered by ANSA anyway, quite comprehensively, I think. Well, pretty well. I mean, it's not difficult to get hold of Fill the Bin to come to a school for an event to give a talk, for example. So there's that side of education is probably quite well covered. I mean, not perfectly, but quite well covered. I think the area where education is needed and engagement, frankly, some of it's got to do with landlords, because a lot of the problems, as a most commonplace, not all of them, but a lot of them are related to HMOs and people in transient residence, if you will, people who are going to be for a short time. And to reach them, it's not even much point in always just contacting the tenants, because they might be gone next month or 6 months' time. It's got to be the landlord, it's got to be the engagement and involvement of landlords and agencies on that side of things. So that's, I think it said somewhere in the report that the resource in Cheshire East for housing is very limited, strategic. So I think that's one area that is it's important to get that engagement, to push that home.
I don't know, it's something I advocated a few times.
Yeah.
I think you need a balance of that bit, education bit, but also to know that somebody is going to, so then it gets less and less. Yeah, I agree.
So that's, I mean, so basically that's an important thing, education and engagement. That's a start, but I don't know quite where that leaves us in relation to the options.
If we think about what the benefits were of the system that is now gone, presumably that was a mixture of providing education, telling people what they should do properly, but actually then leaning on people when they didn't. The existing systems, I understand, they didn't go around picking up the rubbish because there was a team to do that.
That's right.
So I wouldn't have thought in any of these options that's what the individual would be doing.
No.
Okay. So if we're trying to get a mix out of this, which is, if you like, both carrot and stick, are there any options in here where the stick can be used? If you like,
Yes.
I presume that has to be by the individual being employed by Cheshire East.
It would have to be an enforcement officer.
Okay.
They would work with whoever was
Right.
there as long as they've been trained
Right.
in order to produce evidence in a way that can
Right.
be used.
Okay. But presumably, if we did go down that route, the relationship in terms of direction, supervision, and employment could be the same as we have with Rangers.
Through, you mean?
In other words, employed by ANSA, but we determine that they're going to be working within the parish of Crewe and so on and so forth.
So option 2 seems to be all of option 1. It's like option 1 plus sort of thing. So it's these extra things. What sort of direction would we have over the ANSA employee in the scope of the things that they're going to do? Would we be able to add things into that, or are they just working within what ANSA do generally? One we're trying to get to is you've got options 3 and 4. Could we put in things from 3 and 4, from the education and getting involved in community projects and things like that, to have one officer who was part of ANSA, who had the relationship with the rest of ANSA, but could do extra things that we can't specify?
Yeah. So
Get best of both worlds.
yeah, I've had conversations with the officer who manages the 2 waste officers currently, and also with the manager for the comms team, and they've been very keen to work together, so taking that officer into schools. And I did ask about the schools in Crewe that have covered, and actually from the list I was given, and it was only as an example, I wasn't challenging them to prove that they come into Crewe a lot, but from that list, a lot of what they classed as Crewe wasn't Crewe Town Council's area, it's what I'd class as, wider Crewe, if you like, so the surrounding areas as well. So it would give the sort of focus in the local schools, but with the ammunition and the knowledge and also the information already produced, if you like, to then deliver that more frequently and more locally. The role that I've compared it to is slightly different to what we would envisage, so I would suggest that we would be stipulating what we want out of the role. So, for example, these 2 officers spend quite a lot of time producing data and reports, and I wouldn't envisage this officer spending any time doing that. They'd be responding and using the data and reports that are there, being produced by other people, so it's been more focused on districts and issue, which school is that, it's related, let's try and do some work here. And obviously the work with landlords, we've covered that before with our street scene officers, and I would envisage that being part of this too. But what you have to remember is that not every landlord is contactable, even in this country at times, and it's not always that straightforward. Our previous officers had a good relationship with a number of landlords, and that work continued. That was established by the street scene officers, but they're not always there either to watch their tenants. And with that churn, the education is continuous. That churn of residents.
Sorry.
We've gone through this conversation a few times in various iterations of this committee, and I think it's fair to say it's a very large and complex problem. And which I openly said I don't have the answers. I don't think it's fair that the assumption anyone might have the single answer. So I'm going to make some challenging questions, not intentionally to push you down the road, just to throw it into the mix whilst we cover this off. The options presented are entirely doable. Different viabilities, different outputs, different outcomes. They all cost more over the year than we've got in the budget. So what is the commitment? I'm asking you as a committee of initial consideration, what is the commitment of members to this? Do you perceive a long-term approach of a significant investment? And that's not predetermined on the answer, but that's effectively it. You've got to start making those decisions, I believe. Again, there are considerations being raised by members associated with bulky waste and landlord engagement. Is there an opportunity to subsidise the collection of bulky waste as an option to throw into the mix? Is that rewarding or preventing? What's that going to do? Is do nothing an option? Is this problem too big for a parish council to address? I certainly don't advocate that, but I think it's right to consider all outcomes in that. And so I just throw those in for a bit of a melee of considerations, but it's a big consideration. At the end of this, we'll tell you decide, and I would council action, not inaction. I don't council do nothing as an option. Do consider what the outcome of that is. Are we going to get to another point in a year and a half, 2 years' time, where we're faced with a new and different decision and there's no sustainability built into this?
Can I just ask a question? Lindsay, do you know, like, is most of the issue, does it seem like it's when tenants leave so they throw all the stuff out, or is it a continuous of the same thing? Because I suppose what I'm trying to say is, you know, because, okay, you can't get hold of all landlords, but the estate agents can, that's a fact. They have to be able to get hold of them, fine, I know that. So you can't get through to the landlord, I say, because they're abroad, fine, but you can most definitely, they are responsible, they are the management, they are in charge. It's their name that's, you know, associated. So you need to get down to what I was trying to say about this, about the longevity. If we're going to afford and commit to this, it needs to be so we've got the nuts and bolts and it's going to work properly. Because otherwise, like Pete said, what it's going to be much the same and we're just wasting. So basically, if it's not right, it's a continuous. It's not just because people are leaving flats and then it's all more waste. So then we need to, a bit like Peter, we perhaps ought to look at incorporating bulk waste tubes somehow. So because what do they do? Especially people that are not from our town, they're not going to have relatives. They're not going to say, Uncle, can you borrow your car? I need to get rid of this. They're not. Let's face the facts. They're not. That's never going to change. So we have got people that are here temporarily. And those people, I would say, in the main, that are probably, you know, not able to even help themselves. So this situation is not going to go away. We've got, you know, train station 1 people to come, but they're not long term. This building going up, this building here, temporarily, whatever. But how do you? So we need to look at it properly. How we're going to get rid of stuff, waste, what's it going to cost? Is it worth discounting it? Answer to get rid of it, but the education's got to still stay, because otherwise, like Councillor Martin said, oh, it's all right, council's going to come along and have a bother. It's got to be the right balance, and then you can be committed to the town council and think, yeah, we are making progress. Unless you've got proper infrastructure, it's just going to be much of the same.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Lindsay, at what point do our ranges actually at the moment step in and clear?
So, yeah, our rangers, we try not to get them directly just clearing alleyways. I know for a fact that if you just clear up, people just tip it again. And I've seen it happen on alleyways that, for example, Community Payback were going every 6 weeks to clean. The minute they arrived, the mattresses, I've seen them come over the fence, come over the wall. So just doing that doesn't work. So where the rangers have been involved, it's been as part of an overall project where there's been the door knocking, there's been the leaflets, there's been the conversation, residents organising clean up, and the ranges have gone in to enable that on the whole, to do a clear up, to get rid of overgrowth, etc.
So they wouldn't be, our rangers wouldn't be responding to fix my street.
No.
That would be totally Alex's responsibility.
Yes, and it is.
Yeah, a couple of things. We know, don't we, that the issue for years around waste disposal and fly tipping has been a number of things. One's been the bulk waste issue. And in fact, if you go on Gary Paley's social media, you'll see every day umpteen photographs of more mattresses being dumped as somebody else has moved out. But it's also been issues about bins not being left on the front.
Yeah.
It's also been about the correct use of the appropriate bin.
Yeah.
And the fly tipping thing as well.
Yeah.
So, and that goes on for a lot, it's a long, obviously it's a long-term thing. I mean, I guess, we're always going to have this issue of people turning over, changing tendencies and chucking stuff out. But I think I've got three scrap metal men in my phone who I phone every time. So there's people around who would certainly for metal who couldn't pick it up off it for nothing. It can be done. Second thing I wanted to make was a point about this is really the strategy around this, isn't it? So, because I think we've got to see this not just as an issue of how do we deal with the crew, it's what is our role as a town council. What my view is on that. We take every opportunity wherever we can to push the devolution issue. Been banging on about that ever since the town council started. And we should, to my mind, we should see this as something which again strengthens the argument about the role and purpose of the lowest level of local government that you can have. And whilst I guess over the next few years there's going to be even more discussion about a Cheshire-wide mayoral system or something like that, what we're going to be doing all the time is arguing for greater devolution to local communities.
Yeah, that's good. As well to bear in mind, I suppose, the strategy is to inform what we'll finish up with that as a job description or specification. What he's spoken about, the education we touched on, there could be more for crew rather than wide area crew town. If you like to establish that, 20 schools and one nursery, as well in and the engagement with landlords in particular, and some residents with landlords is important. That's got to be because it's something that might actually be a declining problem. If landlords find they can't afford to pay the mortgage and it's already evident in some areas with HMO is sold off or rentals being sold off. I mean, you say what approach? There's a challenge there from the term. Short term, or is it long term? I think it's got to be a long term. It's got to be. And as Simon said, it fits into the greater role of crew because of town council. So that leads naturally to a question about control. Okay. Really, how important is having control of the actions of this role? How important is that to members and actually town council officers? How important is that? He who pays, or she, the person who pays
They who pay the piper.
the one who pays the piper calls the tune. And let's face it, the Clean Green project we've been paying one of the smaller pipers, but we've not been able to pull the tune. And in fact, there's no tune at all that's anything to do with us. So I think that we need to decide how much control we want on these sectors, on the things that we actually do, and what's actually appropriate. And I have to say, the business about faulty items and paying for it, I would dismiss that, frankly, as a town council role. That is for Cheshire East and Answer to thrash out between themselves. They decide on the charges regime, as they will do later this year. There is an argument, well, actually, why don't you have a free collection every 2 or 3 months? All these debates are better held on that sort of thing on Cheshire East Council, say, in the local committee. And something that's highlighted in several of these options, well, a couple of the options anyway, is this. It's a serious one we have to consider. It's a strategic issue, which isn't clearly related to this. Is to do with office space. I mean, this building is fully used, overused. Unless, of course, you sort of take over next door, knock the door, knock the walls, or have another office. That's something we really have to face. And then there's a good point made about parking. If you have a vehicle associated with the member staff, it needs to be secure and maintained and all the rest of it. So that's a strategic question for the council to weigh up about, and maybe not immediately, but I think maybe at some point in the future that may be will be an issue. Control. How much control? Take back control. Yes, take back the power.
Yes, I would. Yeah, that's right. Yes, so I want to sort of, the one thing I've been thinking about over these options here is, like I said, about control side. You've very kind of given us that kind of option regarding, is it going to be by council, or are we looking to bring somebody in through answer? In your discussions, there's definitely a lack of control that goes to an answer colleague in terms of what they do. We employ them, but they operate within answer.
Well, the rangers operate within answer too, and we have day-to-day management of them. We allocate the jobs.
So
they're employed by answer.
And that's the control issue.
Yeah. So that's not impossible. It's more difficult with enforcement because you've got all the technicalities around the legalities and how things have to be done that we couldn't control.
And the other thing I was thinking about as well is that we're definitely talking about short-term and long-term. I've always looked upon the enforcement and clearing up is a continuous short-term solution. It's never a long-term idea, because you'll never get to that point resolved. To spear out an option, I would see the opportunity to educate. When I say educate, I'm not just talking about schools. From the education, it's about education of the populace, it's education of knowledge of how this works, and every person can access. That's the avenue we should look at. I like the idea of the CTC having neighbourhood resource officer. Because even though in some of the negative you mentioned about other groups may not wish to work with the town council, if we are in the long term, this is about relationship building. This is about being proven to wanting to support and develop and help guide people to the right services, not to add an extra service, not to be punitive, because we still can direct certain administrators to that point from the CC. So I just want to put out that what I'm thinking about is definitely on the from the council's point of view, it's about the education, about the referring and building relationships. And from my perspective, it's the Crewe Town Council who's control.
I think the control thing is really important, and the ranger model is a pretty well established one. I think the concern I would have about anything where we are where we are employing and managing directly is the isolation of that person from the rest of the delivery team. You know, it will answer. I mean, it's true, it's difficult enough now to be able to, a message from the town council to go to Cheshire East and be understood in the same way as it is when it was sent. And back again, if it's difficult now, but the education thing is dead right, Stuart, right? Which is why I always understood that the previous arrangement, which is now ending, a lot of that was about education in terms of knocking on the door and telling people, no, that's not what you do with your bin. You know, and I would have thought that the waste officer role could encompass that. Because it's direct stuff, it's got to be face to face, it's got to be actually having an impact in a local community. And,
So maybe the answer is the easy answer is
I'd have thought in terms of dealing with the employment issues and all that sort of stuff, but also making sure that what we were wanting to be done was part of the whole, then that would be more productive, as indeed the Ranger Service has demonstrated over the years.
any other questions before we talk?
Just in terms of kind of asking yourself what you might want as a member from the service, personally, I feel like I want someone who can support me when I'm trying to tackle an issue. At the moment, there doesn't seem to be that in place. And agencies receive photos from me and things, and can we use this project to try and tackle these issues? And get residents telling me in my ward every week, oh, there's another load of fly tipping there, what are you doing about it? And say, oh, I've reported that all this things cleared up. And it's the same cycle going round and round again. And to have someone, however we organise it, we come in and have a meeting and say, this is the problem area, have some support to go out and tackle it. And as a member, go out there into your ward and go and do the door knocking with someone helping you, someone providing the material to deliver to those residents and to educate them. And I feel at the moment, it's just sometimes you're just going over the same thing again and again, you're not really getting any support. So I would probably favour, in my personal opinion, option 2 with answer involved, and then the direction of the town council to bring in the other activities that we want. And that obviously is good. It's just my 2 piece for it.
So, just to
just very quickly building on that, because at the end of the day, I think we've identified that, they'll go remove one fly ticket and then another one appears. So we have to get to, in their mindset, why does that happen? Why? The question's why, yeah, it's part of education, but at the end of the day, we've got rules. Okay? But let's get into the reality. So you can, educating the bins and cleaning the streets, that's easy, in my opinion. We've proved it. We've proved it. That can be done. With the community, that's fairly straightforward. Educate, you don't need the bin now. After a bit, well, but the point also is that these people you're educating, they'll be gone in 6 months. You'll have to educate the next people that just come in there, and the next people, so it's a repetitive thing. Okay, that's also fair enough. But the main thing, we've got 2-tier situation going on. We've got the education about the bins, which ones to use, when to leave them, when not to leave them. Then we've got those situations, the fly tipping. So the fly tipping is the bigger mountain that we need to clear up, because that's the one that it's happening all the time. Because what do we do with it? So I think it's got to be a Cheshire East combination. We can't literally do it on our own. So that's why I believe somewhere along the line, it's got to be, so if that area is predominantly doing that, they've either got to have leaders to say, right, we're going to remove waste like Steve said, I mentioned it on the last time, once a month. So they say that once a month it's paid, it's cost this much. I think people aren't prepared to pay, but people get fed up, it's in their house, it's sick as in that fridge, I don't care about it. You've got to get into the mindset of people's everyday living. And that's what's been missed. That's why I agree it's got to be answer based and but the whole thing, education on a more basic level, but also need practicalities. You can educate as much as you like, but what are we going to do with it? As soon as it's gone wrong, fridge out. That's the reality of it.
I'm sure this is in an attempt to be helpful. This is like narrowing down the options. I think it'd be worthwhile testing opinion across the committee anyway. Who do you want to employ this officer? And support through town council. I think that's a fairly big reason. It's hard to think, you know, 4 options. 2 town council, one town council. It was a mixture. You could say either town council or answer. I think that might help narrow things down, and then we get to what's it takes us towards bits of one or other of the options.
Shame option.
It shapes
I
us.
think in town council, but I don't think we've got the infrastructure. That's why I'm saying then, because I don't think otherwise I'd like to have it within the towns. We've got full control. We know what we're doing. I don't think we've got the infrastructure everything to go. That's why I'm suggesting this one. But ideally, it's better if we've got the towns that have control of everything, but we've got to rely on others as well. And that's what I can imagine. So that's why I'm trying.
So I think you're all right. It'd be good to try and sort of narrow it down now. Listening to what everyone's been saying, I'm happy to change my mind to what we discussed. I think with option 2 and 4 tend to recommend that answer involvement that we support. So are we happy then for 1 and 3 to be shelved? And looking at 2 and 4, which is basically more answer based, not through town council directly. Does anyone have any?
Well, I think it's like we said, we do not want some control. We don't answer to just. We want to be able to.
We would manage.
Yeah, they want to
Right.
manage. Yeah, I think that's important because otherwise they're not going to understand our needs.
Okay, but that's the case.
Well, that mean, I would be prepared to support that suggestion, the suggestion that we narrow it down to some people who are employed by the answer. But management,
Correct.
management.
We'll have to be clear through that. We're going to say directed rather than managed.
The Ranger model.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it would be the Ranger model.
Yeah, Ranger model.
So that
That's it.
the day-to-day activities are directed by the town council. That was established eventually, wasn't it, with the Rangers, although it wasn't the case initially, I suspect.
It's always been happening.
Well, yeah,
Well,
I think the
it
town
was new
council.
at the time and it required some stressing,
Yes, okay.
but now it's an accepted model.
Very good, well done.
Okay,
Okay.
so just wanted to Councillor.
I know with the Rangers, it's a really good working relationship, and they come in and out of the building, and everyone knows everyone. Would that be the same sort of situation? The answer.
I think so. I mean, there's got to be a personal connection with the town
Not
council
like they're just
here.
working remotely,
But
and just
they-
email
yeah.
back to you or something.
That's it. But in terms of HR and line management, etc., and much as we do with the Rangers, they have an identifiable manager within ANSA. It wouldn't be fair for them to have 2 masters in that sense, but it's all worked to an agreed way and an agreed approach with our focus.
So to clarify then, if we're looking at options 2 and 4 where we have sort of answer, like the range approach, then it's a case of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it's effectively almost like a full-time versus part-time
Yes.
view now. But even in the full-time one, you mentioned that there is education initiatives.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I propose we go to option 2.
Option 2. Okay. Is that a good proposal?
Yeah.
Do we have a second for proposal 2? Okay, so all
I suggest.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is my problem with this, and I think everybody's problem is, right, there are 4 options, and the big choices are, answer, is it going to be an answer employee or a council employee? And then there are slight variations, there's a lot of material in there, and we've touched on that. So, I mean, I'm not option 2 as presented is like that's the base, if you like. But then there's those things that we have been talking about and stressing that we need to be incorporated or clear in it, because it's in any sort of job spec or specification.
Yes.
I think Lindsay knows that.
I do.
Yeah, okay, but I'm spelling that out because otherwise, you know, if you like, the person on the cup of omnibus might say, "Oh, they've gone for option 2." Well, it doesn't mention X, Y, and Z. So you know that, I might know that, but we need to be clear that is what ANSA might understand, and actually the general public. What do we want to achieve? What do you should speak about that for some time.
Councillor
I think just going on from what Councillor Hookman said, we could probably have the best of both worlds if we sum it up at the points that we want from 4 into 2. Be able to do that whole within one scope.
So just to clarify then, basically we are definitely on the idea of option 2, but we are looking for a bit more. Sorry, Clark.
Please.
I was going to say what we could do with it is to propose what we do. Obviously, it's not about saying right, go hire someone right now. It's about we just need to see a final job description based on option 2. We need more engagement.
But we so far, it's fantastic. The progress has been made and it's been made ambitiously, which is great. And I would seek even more ambition from you, that you might determine the longevity of this at this point. An intent to hold this post for at least 3 years. That sort of thing I would suggest to you, or longer, whatever you feel is much of a portion down the road. And I would suggest, if I may, that when it comes to the added definition, that this is considered the proposals put forward. The principle are option 2 with the best parts of option 3 or added into that definition is supported and recommended to council on a minimum suggested 3-year term. Supports, it helps with recruitment for one thing, and it provides for that longevity that I think you're going to require. And that definition is agreed by circulation by the officer after the event prior to the
So we've had a proposal already the document. Do you want to do a separate for 3 years?
I don't know, it's up to you as members. I'm suggesting that it's completely different.
I was going to say that completely. But Councillor.
Well, I'd be quite happy to propose a minimum of 3 years. The duration of the term.
And so, therefore, can I have a second both on option 2 with a view to that and the 3-year contract? All those in favour? Carried.
That will then be, once the definition has been agreed by consensus of this committee, that will be recommended to council because the level of spend has to be approved by council. And it also the budgets that will be drawn down from reserve, which we haven't seen to it's not risk, just to make them aware that that needs consideration of council.
Right, thank you.
Okay, right. Just a thought, actually. I don't know if I can personally do this, but I was wondering whether we could take a quick break or get some water. After that, I could do with a quick break if that's all right.
German refreshments.
Okay, so let's continue on then with item 8. To consider matters related to town centre management.
So this paper is to seek some approval this evening, but also just to start some consideration of what we mean by town centre management and how this committee would like to treat that. So just to give you a description really, town centre management is really around creating a competitive edge for a place. It's about managing its services efficiently, its maintenance, etc. And sometimes still do employ town centre managers, but there are many other stakeholders involved in making the town what it is. And the sort of roles that traditional town centre management are around liaison with businesses, maintenance, liaison with stakeholders such as the BID, which the Town Council has supported that development of, and other services, whether it's police, etc. Management and hire of licensed spaces, which the Town Council doesn't have any ownership of, and we don't manage that, although we do police charity collections with agreement with Cheshire Council. Management and maintenance of public spaces, management of events, which the committee oversees, management of marketing of the place, which I don't believe any committee oversees. We have a communications and marketing role for the Town Council for its own, but we don't manage the marketing of the place, and there are other stakeholders with an interest in that as well, although we created a brand to do that work. The liaison with other agencies around antisocial behaviour, crime, etc., traffic issues, and also those traditional things like floral displays and planting. So that's a sort of traditional town centre management role. However, town centre management is increasingly being rebadged as place management, with a focus there developing a future vision for the place. It's regeneration, repurposing places to take them into, to make them have relevance to current and future uses, and to create that vitality. So, as I said, the Town Council supported the development of a BID. That's part of the story, and we're still involved in that, but that doesn't serve all our requirements. And we fund all those improvements, such as public realm improvements, etc. The big capital expenditure has been funded through various sources and is ostensibly managed by Cheshire Council. And we have a number of changes which I've highlighted here coming to the fore now, which will start to redefine the use of the place. So we've got the lifestyle centre already in place and the UTC, but we also have seen the regeneration of the market hall, which was intended to regenerate and bring in more independence into the smaller town centre properties, whereas the bigger businesses tend to go for those 100,000 square feet with free parking type retail parks. We had an edge of town retail park. We've got the new bus station, the multi-storey car park, other car parks being developed for sites such as the History Centre and the Oak Street car park for the youth zone, which will bring in new users into the town. And we have plans underway for improved connectivity projects such as the Southern Gateway, Valleybrook Corridor, Mill Street Corridor, demolition of Royal Arcade, with meanwhile uses to be decided. And therefore we also have lots of other stakeholders coming to the fore. I mean, the Town Council is a fairly new stakeholder for the town itself. We only formed, 11 years ago. And then we've got BID membership, we've got ASDA, changing ownership of the business itself, but also therefore changing responsibility for the Victoria Centre, and we're already starting to see those changes in terms of their influence, youth zone, the market hall, etc. So it may be a role for the Town Council, and I'm throwing this in as a suggestion, that at a future meeting, as we're starting to see these stakeholders becoming more involved in these developments coming to the fore, that we'd like to go through a bit of a structured approach where we will bring in all of those stakeholders to talk about what next for Crewe. Now, this isn't a huge master planning exercise. I'm not saying we don't need that, but in the short term, it might be useful to be the influencers and lead on a stakeholder type engagement exercise, perhaps use a model, for example, used by the Institute of Place Management around identifying the place's characteristics, its purpose and what's missing, and how we can best influence some future stages of the place that are not just purely investment based. So I'll leave that with you as a thought at this moment, and perhaps we can have further discussion about that when we come to the next meeting. We also have the other services that we're investing in as a town council. Quite recently, over the last 2 years, we've been investing in food planting schemes, new planters, repayment, etc. And there are just a couple of things I wanted to mention to you. So I've just been reviewing the work that's been done by all the tasks with them. There are still some jobs to be finished on the repayment that we outlined previously. And so that work's going to take place now. We have some better weather. Last year was appalling, and lots of work couldn't be finished in a timely way. But also, since the hoarding has gone down, some of the planters we thought would have been gone forever have reappeared at bollards, so they need repainting. So, and new planters on them, etc. So, I would like some approval tonight just to spend some of our public realm funding on painting what's been rediscovered, been unearthed recently, which looks awful at the moment. And I have a quote there from Orbitas to do that work, which is £1,670. But in addition, we have another opportunity here for consideration. I asked Orbitas to look again at what's been done over the last 2 years. And it's like the Forth Bridge, we still need some maintenance of. So I have a proposal here from Orbitas to go back over things that we've already had repainted as they're starting to fade or need a bit more attention. Over about 15 days work over the year to go back over those benches and things that have got dinged and dented, to get them back up to scratch and to do some repairs there, which would be another £3,650 over that period of the year. So in conclusion, I'm asking you to consider and think about for future meetings where you would like the Town Council to focus its definition of town centre management and where you would like to influence that, but also in the short term just to improve some expenditure to add value to what we're already doing to just improve the town centre.
So what I'd like to do is
Just want to clarify that those spend requests are well within approved budgets, raises the standards in the town centre's agreements and seeks to maintain that high standards. It's part of what Lily said, to keep to that placemaking part that we can play on that.
So what I want to do is just considerations. I'm thinking first we'll deal with the requests from Lily first in terms of minutes now. Once we approve that, we're going to look at the any questions about the costing or any other requests first.
Yeah, please, Chair, just agree that we should do this stuff. I just wondered, Lindsay, whether you've had much in terms of any of the detail around the actuality of the scheme that's going to be done on the Royal Arcade now in terms of the grassing and everything, because clearly there's, having gone round it today, you can see where the join is, can't you? And clearly when that Cheshire East scheme is done in terms of grassing and so on and so forth, we've got to make sure that actually then it connects well.
Yes, and we don't have detailed
Right.
as far as I know.
Okay.
But I will be happy to know you've gone through a second and answer a couple of questions on that.
Yes, Councillor.
It's not mentioned here, but when I was last walking past that fence and the rock behind it, I noticed that the flower baskets are no longer there. You know, these surely used to be on those posts, didn't they?
There are some there, and they're the ones that I've picked out and identified that we need to repaint. The pole planters that were behind the hoarding.
Yeah.
Yes.
These items, flower baskets.
Yes.
Yes. Right. I wonder what happened to
They've reappeared.
those.
So unless there's any other questions about the considerations for phase 4 aspect of public realm, furniture refurbishment and painting to be delivered, and also the Town Council commissioning Orbitas to provide an annual maintenance on refurbished items at the cost stated by stated before. I guess you should propose and a second for us. Can someone propose? Seconded? Yes. Okay, so all those in favour of the cost? Right, so I just need to open up now to consider over time the direction of the town centre management and opportunities.
just say, well, I welcome this paper, I welcome the opportunity for us to get into this. It's right at the right time, isn't it? I mean, tomorrow events and marketing are going to be considering a paper about the Lyceum Square. Planning are going to be considering a paper about the future of the vacant sites in the middle of town. There's stuff going on now, which means that exactly we're going to consider what our position should be about town centre management.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, it's basically suggesting, it will take time to consider, but I think that's just a suggestion that when we give this thought and return to this after some thought about it, we're not just connecting at future meetings, we're certainly reshaping what you do. Hopefully we can start to make a productive time.
So, what do you need from the committee?
Well, we have the approvals there for that expenditure, and unless there are any other thoughts tonight that you just want to share with me to take away, then we'll carry on this conversation. And I welcome if anybody wants to come to see me, or if you want to send any thoughts, please do, around what you think about town centre management, what that role is, and we'll start to define it at the next meeting. But it'll just help me to feed another paper perhaps for you, some more thoughts.
We want the council members to go away and have a think and come back. Okay, so for item 9, with the assets and services, this first part of it is the lot.
Then either of these items, which are normally correctly charged by, I'm not going to use, so I apologise for that. The long and short is they are purely for noting with regard to allotments, the council owns the allotments, they are self-managed by the site allotment associations, often a selection of 3 federated in the West Side of town. They are operating positively, they are extremely well engaged and helpful, and we don't have any issues with any of them. There is always things to do, but no negative issues. And it's either this just is identifying the approach of active asset management. They are assets of the town, so responsibility to ensure they're maintained. And some of that maintenance is beyond the expectation of a small voluntary group, such as dealing with large tree issues. So this year we implemented a regular annual tree inspection regime, which hasn't been in place previously. It's identified some intervention works, which are within the budget associated and already approved, and they're going ahead. So that's allotments, unless anyone wants to discuss them further on that. There's no request here, it's just because this is the committee that talks this. The aim for the 8 non-federated sites was that they were to be self-managed by the site association, which they all are. We await 2 sites to formalise their lease. Now, nearly there, it's taking a bit of an ongoing push, but we're nearly there. We're just 2 more, and we'll be finally at the end of that process.
Well, I mean, yeah, thank you for the update. Yeah, I must admit that on 9-1, the allotments, I was amazed actually that there were still leases to be completed after all these years. And I remember I do recall there was quite a battle, things like that, let's say being a legal battle almost between the town council and the borough council some years back, which was resolved and the bottom of it was that the legal advice that the town council had effectively was actually the same as we did the borough council some years ago, and obviously I'm not going to go into that detail, but that must have caused some of this delay, but I would suggest, in the debate, that accepted in 2018 when the town council had been in existence for 5 years, but the attitude of Cheshire Council towards the town council, has improved considerably, I think, compared to what it was 10 years ago. Different times, different leader as well.
Can I point out that there was an intent to federate the 8 sites. That reached a conclusion, but for one reason or another, and I'm sure it's just natural cycle things, that agreement was never formalised. There was no lease signed with the Federation, which wasn't discovered until 2.5 years ago. That wasn't formalised. And so since then, we've been trying to formalise it. The Federation wasn't able to form after that point, so that's why it's going individually.
So well done to the existing town council management in that case. And on the railway cottages, which are already declared non-financial interest, yeah, I think it is interesting that the fact that the site's boundary walls to the south and to the west. Then I've got this disorder.
Does it mean it's typed east?
It says east.
That's mine.
But I mean, that's a typo. I mean, it was a bit confusing. Walls to east. That must be Market Terrace.
I must have been looking the wrong way then.
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously there's a problem with magnetic north that particular day, or something. Well, so it's rather interesting if it turns out that they are actually under the freeholders owned by the Borough Council. I think it's rather interesting, although, yeah, but the other matters are legal ones, and I won't twist my own mind in going into them, but this is rather interesting. Repairs are required to the western wall, which may be the case one day. That would be a fairly expensive exercise for whoever is responsible for the repair. Very expensive. But that's just a comment. A note. Thank you.
So, is this one just the noting of this one?
Just for noting, the committee that oversees this, you're welcome to challenge it and seek more or less or whatever you want to do. I think it would be wrong just to plough on regardless and not tell you what's going on.
So noted. Right, so item 10, ranges, play areas, green spaces and volunteers.
Tell me again, sorry. I never remember what I wrote. Hopefully it's in the right direction. I think it's not there as well, is it?
Yeah.
Yes. It's the only further consideration may be surrounding, it gives an indication of the works associated with green space and shared space maintenance that we do, which is great. I think there's a general shared consensus and ambition that is developed. Through, for example, council says through devolution, but at this stage that's what we've got. The other aspect is the engagement and the sense of community ownership of green spaces and parks, which we started with ward members taking forward actions in their local parks, such as litter picks, which was fun in February and March. I imagine it's an awful lot funner in May and June. So what that report might seem to do is just reinvigorate that action, see if ward members want to arrange more activity in their parks, new activity, the same or repeat, and try and build a foundation of engagement that will take some time, I'm afraid, because it doesn't exist. Build anything new takes a bit of time, but members are willing and interested. We can make sure people are aware that it's going to take place, provide litter and bags, all that sort of thing. There we go.
Any questions? Right, so just need a notation.
Yeah.
So it brings on to the final item, item 11, and that's to note the proposed date of the next meeting, 3rd of September at 6